All right, let's see. Ms. Rivers, good morning. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Yes, I can.
Great. Then let's get started. We'll get on the record. This is 23 SC 1877742, which is State versus Esposito. And we are here for an immunity motion that Mr. Esposito's attorney has filed. And why don't we get the appearances for the record? I think neither counsel on either side regularly appears here in 8D. And my court reporter, Ms. Rivers, is virtual, so she can see you all on the screens, but you're going to need to be near microphones while you're talking with me or asking witnesses questions, and it would be great if she had your name. So on behalf of the state, we have?
Brian Watkins, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Watkins.
Good morning.
And on behalf of Mr. Esposito?
Good morning, Your Honor. Molly Palmer. I'm joined here by my client and also Gina Young, our investigator on the case.
Oh, Ms. Young.
Hello.
It's been a minute.
Yes, it has.
Good to see you.
You too.
All right, so I think we're all set. Mr. Watkins, is there anything we need to cover administratively before we get started?
I'm not aware of anything, Your Honor, other than maybe a rule of sequestration. Understand that the witnesses allowed, expert witnesses allowed to be present. No.
Okay, and I think you've agreed, Ms. Palmer's calling at least one witness virtually, and you're not objecting to that person appearing virtually?
I am not, correct. And
Great.
Your Honor, for the record, I have Ms. Christy Manos appearing with me. She's also investigator with our office.
Great. Okay, sounds good. So Ms. Palmer, there do seem to be lots of folks here, perhaps on behalf of Mr. Esposito, and if they're not witnesses, they're more than welcome to be here. It's a public proceeding. It's being live streamed. There are lots of ways to hear and observe what's going on in court today. Is there anyone we need to have step outside other than your expert or experts?
No, Your Honor. We just have Mr. Esposito's friends and family. One of our experts, Glenn Corbett, is here present in the back as well. Our other expert, Brad Smith, is on Zoom, but our remaining witnesses are all already outside of the courtroom.
Okay, great. And do you have anything administratively that we need to address before we get started?
No, Your Honor, I don't believe so. Mr. Watkins and I have already shared exhibits. I don't anticipate any issues.
I appreciate that. And I have both your exhibit lists right here in front of me, which is very helpful. Clearly, the record will be made through the witnesses who testify today and the exhibits that are admitted. But just to let you know, because I've reviewed the motions, I've got a basic understanding of what I think is at issue here. Mr. Esposito, and it may still be officer, but at the time it was Officer Esposito, and several colleagues from the Alpharetta Police, plus somehow someone from Milton Police was in the mix. We're responding to a call at the Moya household concerning a potential domestic violence situation. And Mr. Moya was ultimately taken into custody, and there was a struggle over getting him into custody. Officer Esposito was the canine officer at the scene, and his canine Aries ended up supposedly biting Mr. Moya at Mr. Esposito's command. It wasn't an accident that it happened. It was that, I'm going to call it use of force just for our analysis, that resulted in a civil federal lawsuit as well as an indictment of Mr. Esposito for aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and violation of oath of office, I think is the third one. But it surrounds, as I understand it, and again, I'll be driven by what the witnesses testify to and body cam video, et cetera. But I'm just trying to frame it, at least for myself. It surrounds Officer Esposito's decision to have Aries bite Mr. Moya. Once it sounds like it was just clothing, and then that didn't yield compliance. And so the second time it was actually a bite to Mr. Moya's person. But we'll see what the witnesses have to say. Ms. Palmer, the burden is yours, so you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Do you want me to do some brief remarks in the way of an opening statement?
If you think that there are things you want to add beyond what I shared with you, is just because I'm your jury in the end. And so I shared that to spare you both the need for an opening, unless you're welcome to give one. But having read primarily your motions. That's where I gathered this, and I appreciate that they're unproven, although you were pointing to record made in district court, et cetera. It'll be the record made here that drives my analysis. So it's up to you. If you think there's some other things you ought to get in front of me as an advocate, as opposed to the evidence before we get started, I will defer to you. You and Mr. Watkins have today. So just make sure what you need to do fits into today.
I understand. I do just want to preface for the court that we will meet our burden today through our witnesses and testimony, and we'll show that when Mr. Esposito arrived, former Officer Esposito arrived on scene, he had the authority to detain Mr. Moya because of the facts and circumstances. He understood through the CAD, which detailed the 911 call, and the radio, as well as what he observed on the scene. And this was a tier 2 encounter. Mr. Moya was not free to leave. Through the 911 call in the CAD, officers on scene knew that he was punching things, growling, acting wild, that there was a gun in the home, and that there were children in the home. When Mr. Esposito came on scene, the suspect was belligerent, yelling profanities. He balled his fists. He was acting disorderly. And soon this became a tier 3 encounter. I just want to note that for the record because it is part of our analysis today, although we are here in a self-defense posture. But again, as Your Honor has referenced, there has already been a judicial finding by Judge Ross that Mr. Esposito had reasonable suspicion to believe domestic violence occurred at the time he arrived based on the 911 call, and that the officers had probable cause to effectuate a seizure and probable cause to issue an arrest warrant for Mr. Moya for violating OCGA 1610-24B, felony obstruction. And with that, Your Honor, we will call our first witness, who is Mr. Brad Smith, appearing by Zoom.
All right, Mr. Smith, if you let me find you here. There you are.
Oh, do you need me to move?
All right, if you could unmute Mr. Smith.
Oh, you're swearing.
He won't stand there the whole time, just swearing him in.
Swearing him in. No, whatever
Looking at your
someone wants
notes.
to do is fine with me.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Smith, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
Great. Okay, if at any point during your examination by Ms. Palmer or Mr. Watkins, you cannot hear what's going on, please let us know, and we'll do the same if you come in hard to hear. Deputy Gordon is going to swear you in, and then Ms. Palmer can start her examination.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good Lord, your hand. State and spell your name for the record.
Brad Smith, BradSmith.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Morning.
What's your current occupation?
I'm the founder and the owner of Canine Tactical Operations and Consulting.
Generally speaking, what would you say you do in that role?
Canine Tac Ops is basically twofold. I provide expert witness opinions like we are here for today, but I also run a canine SWAT and a canine patrol tactical school for law enforcement and the military that I teach literally across the world. And we also have 2 other classes that we teach as well for tactical tracking as well as for tactical movements.
Have you ever been employed as a law enforcement officer?
I was.
Okay, can you tell me when and for how long, or where as well?
5 years with the Whittier Police Department in Southern California from 1981 through 1985. And then I lateraled over to the West Covina Police Department in Southern California, where I spent my remaining 25 years in law enforcement and retired on June 24, 2010, after 30 years of service.
Okay. For any of those departments, did you ever serve on patrol?
Yes, I would say for the majority of my career, I think it was 28 years, I worked patrol in some type of patrol function.
And when you were a peace officer, did you have any specialized assignments?
I did.
What were those?
At Whittier, it was just strictly patrol, working patrol, handling calls for service. At West Covina, I worked patrol. I also worked a DUI and hit and run investigations team. I was part of a few DUI task force that were located within Southern California and working with other outside agencies. I was a dog handler for 20 years. I had 3 dogs personally assigned to me that I trained and worked over those 20 years. I was a SWAT operator for 5 of those years and a SWAT dog handler for 18 of those years. And then in my time off, I was a tactical flight officer. Some people know them as observers in our regional helicopter unit for about 3 or 4 years. I also, too, towards the end of my career, supervised a park and commercial task force, as well as a graffiti unit.
And when you were a peace officer, what kind of role, in addition to all of those things you just described, did you have regarding specifically canine tactics and canine handling?
Well, obviously, I responded to canine calls and just normal calls for service during my time in law enforcement. But I also taught, not just in my department, but I taught for a kennel in Riverside, in the city of Riverside in Southern California during some of those times too.
Did you have any other roles in terms of officer training while you were with the department?
Yes, as far as within the agency itself, I was there. I was a canine handler for 20 years, but also their canine trainer for 25 of those years. I was a field training officer. I conducted briefing trainings. I conducted in-service trainings whenever it was related to some canine related event.
So can you describe essentially in your role as a canine trainer, what it is you would do?
Within the department, for those 25 years, I was responsible for our weekly canine maintenance training every Thursday night. There would be several agencies around West Covina, approximately 6 to 10 dogs, not including our agency's 3 dogs. But there was around 13 dogs total that I was responsible for every week to maintain, supervise, and be responsible to make sure that they were proficient in such things as obedience, building and area searches, vehicle searches, detection, arrest techniques, and to make sure that, you know, they were just basically ready for any real world scenario they would hopefully come up with. That was just within my agency.
So if that's just within your agency, what about canine training outside of your agency? Did you do any of that?
I did.
Tell me about that.
From 1987 to 1997, on my off-duty time, I taught at a kennel in Riverside, California called Adlerhorst. Adlerhorst. Adlerhorst is a, like I said, it's a kennel. It supplies dogs. It supplies training to agencies across the United States, as well as provides different training courses, basic canine courses, what we would call monthly maintenance training, tracking, detection work. And during those 10 years, I would conservatively estimate that I taught well over 5,000 dogs and handlers during that 10-year time frame that I worked just out at Adlerhorst.
So how many states have you received your canine training in?
If I can go back,
Sure.
you had mentioned outside of West Covina. In January of 1997 through today, I began teaching my canine SWAT and canine patrol courses through my business, Canine Tactical Operations. Our two main courses are a class called SKIDS, SKIDDS, and a course called CATS, CATS. SKID stands for SWAT and Canine Interacting During Deployment School, and CATS is Canine Tactical School. I've taught these classes through my business literally all across the United States, Brazil several times, Canada numerous times, Australia, Costa Rica, and even in China. Once again, a low estimate on how many dogs and handlers and supervisors and SWAT operators, patrol officers, specialty units that I've taught since January of 1997 goes well into at least 10,000 with regards to that. Let me see. I've also too, outside my agency, I've been requested to teach at several canine and SWAT conferences. We call these dogless conferences because the handlers don't normally bring their dogs to this. It's strictly a classroom environment. And once again, I've taught easily over 5,000 law enforcement officers since probably 1987 in places, just within Canada, US, Brazil, and like I said, all over the United States.
What about, can you briefly run through what canine certifications you personally hold?
When I was an officer, as far as canine certifications, with all three of my dogs, I successfully completed and passed California Post's requirements for a police service dog to be able to work the street in both patrol and detection. I also received a certification through NPCA, National Police Canine Association, for patrol dogs, and certification through detection work as well. I got those in addition to the California Post. I didn't have to get the NPCA one, but I was always willing to train, challenge myself, test both me and my dog to see what certifications that I could get while being a handler on the street. Every year too, for 20 years with my three dogs, when I had them at, not all at the same time, obviously, but I was required to go through what we call recertification every year. I was able to successfully complete all of those in 20 years and never failed a recertification process there either.
You've mentioned California Post. What does Post stand for?
POST stands for Peace Officer Standards and Training.
Do you have any other Post certificates that you can share with the court?
When I was working, I had my basic post, my intermediate post, and my advanced post certificate. I also received in 1997 my master instructor certificate through California Post.
And what about professional associations? Are you a member of any professional associations that focus specifically on canine tactics or canine techniques?
I've been a member of NTOA, National Tactical Officers Association, since the late 80s. NTOA is a worldwide SWAT and training organization. In 1999, I became NTOA's canine chairman and still hold that position today, even in retirement. I'm basically responsible for NTOA that if anybody has any type of canine related questions with regarding to how to deploy a dog with a tactical team and or even with patrol units, I'm the person that they come to. I'm also a member of NPCA, National Police Canine Association, since the 90s. And for several years, I also sat on their standards committee, which basically reviewed their training processes, classes that they held, and their certifications that they did through NPCA. I sat on, I don't know if this applies, but I sat on, I think 4 different California Post committees to review officer-involved shootings with regards to patrol, SWAT, as well as canine training, as well as safety guidelines through the state of California.
And let's move to publications. Have you authored any police community articles, books, publications specifically on canine tactics and canine techniques?
I have. I've published probably over 140 articles in 11 different types of law enforcement magazines throughout my career. I've been the author of 2 books personally that I wrote. My first book, Canine Tactical Operations for Patrol and SWAT. And then a few years later, I actually co-authored a book with regards to canine liability on the bite side. My other authors in that book, they wrote the chapters on detection work.
And what about testifying in court like you're doing now? Have you ever testified in court as an expert on canine tactics or canine procedures?
I have.
How many times?
It's just an estimate, but probably approximately 70 times in both the criminal side and the civil side.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously marked and provided to opposing counsel. It's defense 1, and I'm going to share my screen. And I just want you to tell me whether you can see this. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to scroll through. What is this?
It's my CV, my resume.
Is it current?
There may be one article that is not on there because it was published within the last month or so. It was a canine SWAT tactical debriefing that I wrote for NTOA.
Okay, is this, other than that article, otherwise an accurate copy of your CV?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit defense 1.
Any objection, Mr. Watkins?
No objection.
Defense 1's admitted.
Okay. And have you, Mr. Smith, been retained to consult on this matter?
Yes. I have my CV still on my screen. Can you
Sure.
take that off? I don't know how to do it.
There you go. Okay. And did you review documents and various materials related to the prosecution of Michael Esposito in the course of that consultation?
Yes, I don't think I answered part of your first question. I was retained in August of 23, and yes, I did review material with regards to this case.
Can you give me a brief rundown of what you reviewed in preparation for your role as an expert in this case?
I believe there was the CAD printout, computer-aided dispatch is what CAD stands for. It's kind of a brief summary of the call as it comes out. I believe there was a 911 call, use of force policies, photographs, incident reports, Mr. Adams's report. There was body cam footage as well.
Who's Mr. Adams?
That is the state's expert,
Okay,
ENT Adams, Your Honor.
got it.
And that's all that sticks out in my mind right now.
And did you prepare a report in this case?
I did.
And without going into too many details at this juncture, what generally was your report about?
The incident and my opinions regarding the incident.
Your Honor, at this time, we move the court to accept Mr. Brad Smith as an expert on the issues of standard canine police dog handling, canine control, deployment techniques, and police training and practices.
Police training and practices in general or around canine?
Around canine, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Watkins, do you have any objection to having Mr. Smith qualified in those areas for the purposes of this hearing?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Smith, you are qualified as an expert in the areas that Ms. Palmer just described for the purposes of this immunity hearing.
Okay, and Mr. Smith, I am going to move to Defense Exhibit 2. You mentioned that you reviewed body worn camera footage in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Your Honor, I will say that I believe the state and I have stipulated to the admissibility of certain items of evidence, including the body worn camera.
Okay. For each of the officers, I know we had, I think, 3 or 4 officers at the scene.
Correct.
Okay,
In
great.
regards to body worn cameras, correct.
All right.
And so I'm going to again share my screen, and you'll see the first screenshot essentially of one of those body worn cameras. Do you recognize, and you can see also what it was titled at the top, do you recognize this particular body worn camera, Mr. Smith?
I do.
Okay, what is this?
I believe it's the body worn camera of Officer Esposito.
Okay, and you're familiar with this footage?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I am going to move to formally admit Defense Exhibit 2, which is Michael Esposito's body camera footage.
Okay, a couple questions. I don't have any problem admitting it, especially since it's being stipulated to. Is there audio as well, or is it just video?
There is audio as well.
Okay. And it looked like it was only 11 minutes. Is it a snippet of it? Or this entire encounter about which I've read so much was only 11 minutes?
The entire encounter that's described in our motion is less than 11 minutes.
So you somehow, or someone had, this isn't body camera. After an incident, the officers are standing around and talking, and body cam can keep going. It can be 3 hours worth.
Right.
The segment that you're presenting is a segment with which Mr. Watkins is familiar. And Mr. Watkins, I'm sort of switching questions here, or targets of my questions. You're comfortable that this segment is the complete relevant segment for what we need to work through today? Or is there going to be a second piece of Mr. Esposito's body camera that you're going to tender because you don't think this covers everything?
Your Honor, quite frankly, when I got her videos, which I assume are the same ones I sent over, they're the same. Then
Okay. Right. It was a remarkably short, that's all. It was 11 minutes. And normally these things come up and it's 3 hours and you guys are jumping to a relevant piece. But this is one, I guess you'll do what you will with it, but this is the segment we're using for this hearing.
That's correct.
Okay. Got it. It's admitted.
Okay, before we begin, Mr. Smith, in reviewing this footage, were you able to determine whether unlawful force was used by suspect Travis Moya against the officers on the scene?
Yes, based on my training and experience and expertise, he used unlawful force during his arrest process.
Okay, I'm going to go through Defense Exhibit 2 and I'll play a little bit and then I'll stop and have you expound on that conclusion, okay?
All right.
I'm going to turn up my volume, hopefully we don't have feedback.
How's it going, man? But we're just here to make sure everything's okay.
So if you want to pause for a second, there should be a way to push the audio of the video through our system. So if you want to share it, you don't have to plug anything in, but if you want to stop sharing for a sec, and then when you try to share the video again, there's a little box. So now click on screen share, and when it gives you some options and very discreetly and not helpfully way down in one corner, there's a checkbox that will say something like share audio with video or something. If you check those things, you should be able to leave your computer muted because you cannot avoid the feedback you were experiencing. And we'll see if this works.
Prompted me to restart. I have another computer.
The other we can do, if Mr. Watkins has the video, he can share it, at least initially, but you're welcome to try a different computer. I don't think it's your computer so much. I don't know what was creating. I think maybe the speaker was on your computer as well, but why don't you reconnect with whatever device you want, and we'll see if we can get it to go.
I also have two thumb drives. Okay, let's try this one. I'm not sure if this has solved the problem, but we'll try.
Okay.
So this one. We can't hear that through the court's audio, right?
I'm not hearing it very well, but that doesn't mean that other people can't hear it. If you have it on a thumb drive, you could give me a thumb
Sure.
drive and I can see if I can get it to work. Thank you. Molly. So which one would this be?
This is Defense Exhibit 2.
Oh, got it. Okay. Let me see here.
Two.
Oh, got it. Okay. Let me see here.
How's it going, man? What? We're just here to make sure everything's okay.
Oh, got it. Okay. Let me see here.
461, step it up. He's being disorderly. Hey, just calm down, man. It's
You
okay.
can stop right there. Okay, Mr. Smith, were you able to see and hear that?
I'm sorry, you can play it again.
How's it going, man?
That I can hear, yes.
Hold on one second.
Okay, Mr. Smith, were you able to see and hear that?
Yes.